everyone, and welcome to an XTIVIA webinar, delivering the information you need for the business future you want. We're sharing our knowledge to help your business thrive in today's new normal. My name is Alex Killian, and I'm the video producer here on XTIVIA's marketing team. With that, I'm going to pass it over to our Senior Business Development Manager, Don Volansky, to introduce our presenters this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for attending another XTIVIA webinar. It's my pleasure to introduce our panel this morning. We have Veda Raman, Director of Project Delivery, Anil Azam, Senior QA Engineer, and Mahindra Reddy, Senior QA Engineer. We are here today to talk about ETL testing, and let's kind of jump into the XTIVIA overview. So we've been around since 1992, and we specialize in a number of different IT service areas, including ERP, portal, CRM, BIDW, and data management. Today, we're really kind of focused within our enterprise information management practice. Our team is approximately 380 resources, most of those working here in the US, though we do have 100+ resources in Hyderabad, India. Our client base is diverse, North America primarily. However, we do have a few global clients. We are headquartered in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with additional locations in Texas, New Jersey, New York, Missouri, Virginia. I think it's important for you to know too that XTIVIA rolls up into one of Israel's largest tech companies, Matrix IT Limited. And so the important thing about this slide I always like to share with people is the fact that we've been around long before the pandemic. We roll up into some deep pockets, and rest assured we're going to be here long after the pandemic. So before we start today, we always kind of like to get a flavor for what is it about this webinar that made you interested enough to say, yeah, I'm going to join and tune in. So we have a quick poll question here. If you wouldn't mind, please select the answer that suits your organization the best in your interest level. This really will help us have a better understanding as we advance ourselves through the presentation. Okay, and you can see some of the answers here. So it looks like overwhelming response had to do with analyst user interested in learning more about ETL, which is great. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on. I would like to go ahead and introduce Veda Raman, and she is going to take you through the agenda.
Thank you, Don, for the introduction. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar on ETL testing. So ETL testing has been gaining quite a bit of traction in recent times, especially with Agile, DevOps, artificial intelligence, and cloud technologies all emerging as top trends in the software development industry. The reason for this traction is because all of these top trends that I mentioned have a significant dependency on data. So with this, the right testing strategy, planning, and execution all play a critical role in ensuring that the data gets managed, transformed, and loaded correctly. That's why ETL testing is essential and why we decided to focus a webinar discussing it. So let's start looking at the agenda for today. So we'll first discuss what ETL is. We'll talk about the top 5 benefits of ETL and the importance of ETL testing. We'll also cover the ETL testing lifecycle, followed by the components of ETL testing, some of the tools used, and then we'll finish out our webinar by discussing some of the prereqs we need to make sure we have in place as testers before test execution, and cover some of the best practices recommended for us to follow during ETL testing. So what is ETL? So ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. This means extraction of data from different source systems, transforming it into one format, and then loading it into a data warehouse. As you can see depicted by this diagram, there are multiple layers of data transformation. So during the extraction process, data is obtained from different source systems and then loaded into a staging area. Transformation occurs at this layer where the data is staged. So after the transformation, data is loaded into the data warehouse. From the data warehouse, business users can run reports that can be used to analyze the data loaded and it can be used for making business decisions. Data marts are at the next level and are usually divided into different subject areas, such as finance, HR, accounting, customer data, product information, just to name a few examples. And then business intelligence, BI applications come at the very end, consuming the data for analytical reporting. Let's discuss an example to help understand ETL better. So one of our clients, they're the largest fleet management firm globally. They have reservations occurring through different source systems like websites, mobile apps, direct counters, call centers, and third-party applications as well. So the challenge here was that each booking system has its own database, its own way of storing data, and its own format. So it was difficult for the client to analyze the reservations and customer data. So the solution that we implemented was to transform the data into a standard format and move it into one database, the data warehouse. This made the data analysis much easier for the client. So let's continue and look at the benefits of ETL. So the first one is data repository, which means that all relevant data will be in one place. The ETL process will consolidate the data after transformation and loads it into one data warehouse. This consolidation allows the user to easily access all the data from one place, which helps the project and business teams spend more time performing data analysis and less time gathering the data. The next benefit is data consistency and quality. So all organizations depend on data. This is regardless of industry, revenue, or size of the market it serves. And every organization relies on its data to produce useful information to help make business decisions. Unfortunately, when the data used is inaccurate or incomplete, this causes poor business decisions and a potential hit on revenue due to the lack of quality data. So organizations need to determine the severity of data quality issues and their impact on the bottom line. The ETL process is designed to enhance the data quality and data consistency by cleansing the data, removing duplicates, and removing redundant data. Another gain is improved query and system performance. Data warehouses are built and structured differently than operational transaction systems. Operational transaction systems are focused on creating and modifying data. Data warehouses are explicitly built for analysis and retrieval rather than the daily transactional records. Data warehouses are designed with the speed of data retrieval and analysis in mind, so they allow for storing a large amount of data and rapidly gathering information. And one more advantage is that improved business intelligence. So one of the ETL's process main objectives is to improve the business intelligence framework. So business leadership no longer have to make decisions based on incomplete information, and decisions are based on data-driven facts and supported by relevant information. The leaders are also better informed about data queries and can retrieve information based on their specific needs. The business intelligence you gain can be directly applied to business processes like market segmentation, inventory management, financial management, and sales, just to name a few examples. And as a result of implementing these practices, organizations have seen an increase in efficiency and revenue. Now that we've covered the benefits of ETL, let's talk about what is the importance of ETL testing. So the first one we'd like to cover is accurate data loads. ETL testing ensures that the data loaded to target systems is accurate. So during the overall ETL process, there will be different levels of data cleansing and transformations because data is being sourced from different databases and in different formats. Because of this, there's an increased risk of data potentially being lost or missed when we're consolidating the data into one data warehouse. By testing, we ensure that the data that was loaded to the data warehouse is correct and no data is lost and no duplicates are loaded. We're also ensuring that business transformations are correct. Testing will make sure that the business transformations are developed and working correctly. And it's done by confirming each transformation that's mentioned in the requirements or mapping document. So there's also another importance is reconciliation of data transfers. So there are two phases of data transformation and loading. The first is bulk or initial load, where the entire data set is loaded. The second phase of data transformation is the incremental load, where only the delta between the target and source is loaded at a defined frequency. So this can be hourly, daily, or weekly scheduled jobs. So testers will ensure that the transfer of data in both the initial and incremental phases have been loaded correctly. ETL testing also helps in identifying problems with the source and target systems. Testers can identify the issues with the source information from the start before stacking the data into the data repository. They can also spot the discrepancies or ambiguities in business rules. So in summary, ETL testing ensures data completeness, correctness, integrity, and quality. And now we're moving on to ETL testing lifecycle. So like any other testing process, ETL testing also passes through various phases, as shown here. So the first one is requirements analysis. During this phase, the testing team will start gathering the required documents like the mapping document, data models, and information on source and target systems. And then the testing team will start working on their analysis on all these details and reach out to the business analysts for any clarifications. The next phase is test planning. And this is where we strategize and plan how we will design and execute our testing and document it for reference. So we need to ensure that in our documentation, we include what's in scope, what's out of scope, what is the testing entry and exit criteria, risks, mitigation, and other relevant details needed to ensure we have a successful round of testing. In test design, test cases and SQL queries are prepared. And the testing team will also analyze the source data in conjunction with the mapping document. The team will look at the data model's different attributes, specifically the tables, columns, and data types. And so here, any requirement-related defects are expected to be uncovered at this stage. Next is test execution, and this is where the actual testing occurs. So once the ETL jobs are run and complete, the testing team will start executing the test cases as per the mapping document, and all of the transformations will be tested. And then the next phase is the defect retesting. So during the test execution phase, the QA team raises defects, and these defects will be assigned to the development team. Once they're fixed, the dev team will rerun the jobs in the ETL tool to process the data, and then the testing team will retest the defects and perform any necessary regression testing. So if retest is successful, issues will be closed, and if not, they'll be reopened for reevaluation. And then the final stage is signing off on the testing activity. So once the execution and retesting phases are complete, without any outstanding defects, the QA team will sign off on testing. So now let's look at the ETL data validation process. So this process occurs in two stages. The first stage is the validation of the initial load. So when the ETL logic is developed, it's generally run on the entire data set to apply the logic. Now, this is a vast data set that takes time to get processed and loaded. And so the testing team ensures that the transformations and data quality rules are applied correctly. The initial load is a one-time load, but the next stage is to validate the incremental load. So this data is the delta between the source and target systems. The testing team ensures that the transformations and data quality rules are applied to the newly added data and existing data that's been updated. And so before we move on to the components of ETL testing, we want to throw up another poll question about ETL data validation. All right, great. It looks like everybody answered the question and everybody got it correct, so that's great. So now we'll move on to the components of ETL testing. So what are the components of ETL testing? So the first one we'd like to talk about is the source to target validation. So here what we do is we do a record count validation as part of this to verify that the data between source and target systems match. And then next is metadata testing. So the purpose of metadata testing is to verify that the table definitions conform to the data model and application design specifications. So here we perform data type, length, index, and constraint checks. So for data type and length, we're ensuring that the proper data type and length are present in the target system. For index checks, we'll verify that the unique key and foreign key columns are indexed as per the requirement. And an example of constraint check, where we verify that the columns that cannot be null have the not null constraint, for example. And if you are testing for a data warehouse, then dimensions and fact testing come into play. For dimensions and fact testing, we validate that the proper relationship exists between the dimension and facts table. So, and then another component is the data transformation testing. Here we're making sure to test the transformations as per the mapping document. We'll ensure that all the business rules and transformations are implemented correctly and loaded into the target systems. Data quality testing. We're making sure that all the data quality rules are applied accurately. And then the final component of testing is integration testing. Here we execute end-to-end testing to ensure that the data flows correctly between upstream and downstream systems. So shown here are some of the more popular tools used for ETL testing or ETL development. We're not going to be discussing these tools during this webinar. However, if you are interested in knowing more, please message us here or get in touch with us through our website, and we'll make sure we conduct a follow-up discussion. Now let's discuss the crucial prereqs for ETL testing. So the first one is to make sure we have a clear understanding of business needs and transformations. Before a tester starts working on any of their tasks or deliverables on ETL testing, it is always advisable to have a definite end-to-end understanding of the business need and all the transformations that are to be developed. Next is access to source and target systems. It's always recommended to raise the required access requests as soon as possible in the testing lifecycle and do necessary follow-ups to get access on time. So if your role requires you to run and monitor ETL jobs, ensure you also have the proper access to the ETL tools. This might include running the workflows, checking the log files, and monitoring the jobs. Now, if your role does not require you to access the ETL tools for these purposes, make sure you have the point of contact who will be in charge of running these jobs during testing. The testing team also needs to have the final mapping document handy when testing. And also make sure that the testing environments are available and operational. This step is essential on any project, but especially on the ETL projects, where there's a need to handle massive data with different formats. So the testing team or lead needs to ensure that the test bed is set up well before the test execution starts and is set up correctly with all the necessary access in place. So finally, we will cover some of the best practices for ETL testing. It's essential to understand the implemented database design and data models. This knowledge helps with understanding the relationship between the tables and data that's being tested. Ensure that your documentation is comprehensive and complete. One way to ensure that we stay in line with the changes that occur is to have regularly scheduled meetings to help understand all modifications to the document while it's being created. It's also imperative to ensure that business users are involved and SMEs are available to address any questions or concerns. The next important aspect is to consider performance. In cases where testers are involved in running and monitoring ETL jobs, we should always make sure we document the time needed for the data load and raise appropriate flags when you see any delays or errors. These issues can be sent to the development team to analyze and fix. Also, automate ETL testing as much as possible to make retest and regression testing easier and more efficient. So this concludes my portion of the webinar on ETL testing. Now Don has one more poll question that he would like everyone to answer, and then we'll proceed to our Q&A session with the team.
Very nice job, Veda. Thank you so much. And again, just one last poll question very quickly. Was this webinar valuable to you? Did you learn anything? Was it helpful? Will you be back to see us again? Please take just a quick second or two to give us your answer. And again, we definitely appreciate your attendance today. Well, very good. Look at that. 100%. Everybody said, of course it was. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and flip back over to Alex for the Q&A.
Thanks so much, Don. So it looks like we've already gotten some questions in this morning. I'm going to address these to the whole team, and some different people are going to answer here. First of all, when do you use ETL testing versus other types of testing?
Hi, Alex. So I'm Mandra. I would like to answer this question. So basically, there are a couple of scenarios when ETL testing is recommended. The first thing is ETL testing is required when there are transformations or reporting is involved, such as BI reporting or analytics. The second scenario is it is needed when data is gathered from different data sources to one location, such as data warehouse. So as we seen in the presentation, so ETL is like extract, transform, and load. So we are extracting the data from different sources, and we are transforming the data, and we are loading to the data warehouse. So whenever we have a transformation is required, we need the ETL testing involved. So whenever the reporting required, so we need the ETL testing is required. And I would like to add one more point here. ETL testing would not be necessary if this is strictly a database move and there are no transformations to validate. If there are no validations required, validations required, don't use ETL testing. I hope I answered your question.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Our next question we've gotten in here. What is the most challenging component of ETL testing?
Yeah, so this is a wonderful question. So basically, so everyone will face up challenges while doing ETL testing. I would say the main challenging here is to understand the business logic and the transformation rule. So the transformation rules and the business logic understanding and the fundamental for successful testing. So it is easy to write a query once you understand the business logic and transformation rule. So ensure the plan has ample time and resources to ensure that team understand the business logic and the transformation rules. So once you understand the transformation rule thoroughly, and then you can write a query, SQL query on the source, and you can pull up the data, and you can pull the data from the target, and you can compare easily, and you can get the expected result, or you can get the result out of it. So yeah, so this is what I wanted to answer. Anil, you wanted to add something to it for this question?
Yeah, thanks, Mahendra. Adding to this question, it's very important that the testers should understand the business process and workflows, and at the same time, testers should be familiar with the technical knowledge, building the SQL queries while dealing with the huge and complex and sensitive data. And one more point is where whatever the data we are loading to the for testers, all the data will not suffice our testing requirements. In that case, we need to do the data mockups. Data mockups in the sense we are going with the data updates to make it all the test scenarios should be covered and it is correctly accurate in the data warehouse. I hope I answered your question.
All right, great. Thank you both for that. Our next question we've gotten in here. What tools does XTIVIA use or recommend for ETL testing?
So there are a number of tools available in the market. So as an XTIVIA, we use a few of the tools like query search, Beyond Compare, Informatica Data Quality, and Talent. So we don't have one tool we recommend across the board. Our recommendation depends on what type of the project and how much the size of the data set. So depends on what type of project and data set, we can choose the what tool it will suit for exactly. So how and then that's how complicated the transformations are. So based on this criteria, we can choose a tool, what tool it suits. And so the one tool that we feel has to most coverage is query search, and the one that is most flexible is Informatica Data Quality. And for ETL development, we recommend Informatica Power Center and the Microsoft SSIS.
Okay, great. Our next question we've gotten in here looks like a two-parter. How do you ensure that you are simulating the actual client's environment when you're doing ETL and performance testing? And also, how do we make sure that we are scaling up our performance testing when doing ETL testing?
That's a great question, and I'll jump in and answer that. Since business environments are constantly changing, it's recommended that you understand like the current state and then work with the business to understand, what is the 3-year roadmap really looking like to really simulate that growth. When conducting testing, we need to make sure we're testing the load for scalability. So not just what we need right now, but what we need 3 years down the line. The other important thing to do is we need to make sure that when we're doing the testing, we hit the break point, or almost the point where we hit capacity, to understand our performance limit. And so that way we are even better prepared to scale further if needed. And so just during ETL testing, we need to make sure that we are, in addition to the performance testing, doing the data quality testing, source to target count testing, source to target data testing, performance, as we've been discussing, and data transformation testing, and last, data integration to ensure that the design implemented can scale.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we have time for one more question this morning. And we've gotten one more in. Are you using bots or RPA during ETL testing? If yes, when and how are you using them?
Yeah, we are actually, whenever we have a simple transformations loading to the warehouse, we'll go with the RPA. When we having complex transformations, we would recommend with the RPA because we have a complex transformations to be handled manually to load it into the warehouse. Only for the simple transformation, we recommend for the RPA.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to add something here. So whenever we have a direct mapping, say for example, we don't have any transformation. So say for example, there is one transformation rule says there is a source data and there is a source table and there is a source column, and we don't have any transformation rule that says direct map. Whatever the data is there in the source, it is directly moving to the target. There is no changes at all. So in this situation, these scenarios, you can use RPA. Because there is no much complexity right now. So however, so whenever we have a transformation rule placed, we need to implement some logic between the source and the target. So that in that scenarios, we cannot use RPA right now.
Okay, awesome. With that, I think we're going to conclude our webinar this morning. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning, all of the valuable information you shared with us. And I do want to mention, this will be available in our on-demand webinar library on our website, as well as a bunch of other webinars. We've got a MuleSoft series, a Microsoft series, and lots of good information. So make sure to check those out. And upcoming webinars every Thursday. So make sure you register for our next one. And have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.